Konnichiwa, Ian des. Let's learn some English. So today we're looking at places you can live. If we look at the map here of Tokyo, usually when you talk about where you live, one of the first things you'll mention is your address, which is where you live. Every building has an address. So if we look at the sky tree, this is the address here in Sumida City, Tokyo, and the numbers, and of course Japan. If we zoom in, so this 7-Eleven, here's the address, 2 Chrome 2713. So if I ask you, where do you live? You can say, my house is, you would say your country, the city, the area, the street, and the house number. So all these buildings on this street, they all have the same country, they're all Japan, they're all in Tokyo, they're all on the same street, but they'll have different building numbers or names. So this building, then we have this one and this one, these ones over here, they'll all have different numbers. And then this is obviously an apartment block, so they'll have different numbers as well. Apartment 1, apartment 2, apartment 3, and so on. So I might live in apartment 10, you live in apartment 6. And obviously apartments are very popular. A lot of people live in apartment blocks. But some people live in houses. So you can see here, these houses are next to each other. This will be number 1, 2, 3, but they'll have the same street, same city, same country. And if you want to talk about your house or your apartment, you can talk about the windows and the doors. Here's some doors. Here's a green one, a black one, and a window, of course, opens up and you can look out the window. Here's a window. So every house or apartment will have doors and windows. Your house might be made of brick or stone. They look pretty similar. So here's a brick house, and here's a stone wall. Is your house made of brick? If you live in an apartment, it's probably made of bricks and concrete. But some people live in wooden houses, very old houses. Americans live in wooden houses. They're okay. Do you live in a house made of wood or a house made of bricks? But let's get back to houses. So the person next door is your neighbour. And that can be in an apartment. Your neighbour can be next door, they can be upstairs, downstairs. They can even be the building across. So if you live beside someone, that's your neighbour. We can talk about how things are similar but different. So you both live in a similar area, but you live in a different house. These two houses here, very similar. They both got windows and doors. They're neighbours, but it's different. This house is pink. This house is grey. This house has 3 square windows. 1, 2, 3. This one has 2 windows, and one of them is round. So it's different. But they look kind of the same, and they're in the same street, in the same area. You can also talk about what's near your house. So do you live near a park? So if someone says, where do you live? You can say, I live 5 minutes away from the park. And then they'll roughly know Oh, okay, I know where you live. So if we go back to the map, I might say I live near this park, Kinshi Park. You could also say you live near the train station or the park, or you could really say anything. So I live near the family mark beside Kinshi Park. And people do that so they don't have to say exactly where they live. You shouldn't really tell people your exact address. You can just say, oh, Tokyo, or I live in this area. Don't say, I live at number 3, the street. You can't tell everyone where you live. So yeah, the supermarket, you might say you live near. I live near the family mark, I live near the 7-Eleven, I live near the supermarket. Well, these are telephone wires. Doesn't really explain where you live, but it's good to know that these are called telephone wires. Because obviously these wires go to your telephone. But you might live in a city, like Tokyo, or a smaller town, or a village. So we go back to the map. So Tokyo is the big city. But Yokohama down here is also a city. And then if we look at some places over here in Shiba. So Narita, probably a small city. Maybe it's a town. I don't know. What's it say? It's a city. So that's a city. Here we go. This area is a town, so it's a bit smaller. And then we come down here. So if we come down to these small areas, this is probably a village. It's going to be quite small. So you can see there's a couple of houses. It's not much. It's very different to Tokyo with the big buildings and the apartment blocks, the offices and the supermarkets. It's just a nice little village. If you live here, let me know. See, lots of... Oh, there's a small shop. And then if we look here, big buildings everywhere. This is a city. Cities are very different. So where do you live? Do you live in a city? Do you live in a town? Or a village? Maybe you live in the countryside, out in the middle of nowhere. If you live in a village, you probably live in the countryside. It's nice and quiet. But some people might live beside the beach, the seaside. So there's probably a village there in the background. So some people live in the countryside, some people live in a city or town. Some people are farmers and they live in the farmland. If you live in the countryside, there's probably lots of farms all around you. Rice fields and things like that. And this is very different to the big city. Or some people might live in the mountains. Or you might live in the forest. Usually it's just animals, but there is houses there. Sometimes the mountains and the forests are the same things. Or maybe you live on an island. Obviously Japan is an island, but it's a whole country. But some people might live on a little house like this on an island. There you go, there's an island house. It's a bit different than Tokyo. There's only one building on this island. And if you're talking about where you live, it can be good to know the directions. So this is a compass. north, east, south, and west. So if I ask you what area of Japan you live in, you might say Tokyo, or you might say I live in North Japan, or I live in South Japan, or it might be easier to say I live on the east. You know, if you live in Niigata, you might just say I live in the city called Niigata. Or if you live somewhere here, you might just say east. Same for over here. You know, you might say Sendai, or you might say, oh, I live on the west coast. I live by the sea here on the west. Let's have a look. So here I'm in the west coast of Japan, somewhere in Fukushima. You know, you could say the town or the village, but you can just say, oh, I'm at the west coast, beside the sea. And obviously if you live in this middle bit, you can just say you're in the centre, or say the nearest city, or just give a direction from Tokyo. I live north of Tokyo. I live east of Tokyo. So that is talking about where you can live. So tell me where you live. Do you live in a city, a town, a house, an apartment? What do you live near? What part of Japan are you in? Let me know. And of course, as always, go to the website. There's more videos, more worksheets, vocabulary lists there. So you can help yourself learn more English. That's free to join. Arigato. Matinee.